All right, well, first of all, good to see you, sir.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Dude, it's an honor to talk to you, man. I'm really excited. Now, one of the things I find interesting is the character itself. He when he goes into these fight sequences, he's being controlled, and he has to act like he is not controlling his movements and his arms. What is the key to directing the actor to almost kind of allow themselves to look like they're not in control of their motions?
Well, it's tough because you can't really direct the actor to do it. The actor can either do it or they can't. And so I thank the movie gods I had Logan Marshall Green, because he really threw himself into the physical aspects of the role, and he trained for exactly that. He wanted to be able to kind of pat the head and rub the stomach, as it were, you know, and he was able to pull it off.
Yeah.
You know, it was good. It was like he was the special effect in the movie. You just point the camera at him and he does that stuff.
So cool. Some of the camera shots are unbelievable. You kind of use the camera as a leading character at times, and there's these amazing shots, and the trailer shows it as well, where he'll like get up off the ground and the camera flies up with him. Talk about how that shot is done. Are they both on something together and being lifted up at the same time?
Okay, you want to know how simple it is?
Yeah.
You take an iPhone, you strap it to Logan.
An iPhone?
Yeah, an iPhone, strap it under his clothes, and then the camera just locks to the phone. So wherever the phone goes, the camera goes. And that's it.
But what about when it's a wider shot of him flying up? Is it on a board or something?
It's the camera sits on kind of a gimbal in a housing, and it can move any which way, and it stays locked to the phone. So it's all in camera. It's nothing. We didn't do anything with CGI or in post-production. We just did it all right there.
All right, let's get nerdy for 1 second. I'm sure you've gotten this question, but I'm curious what Gray would do in a Jigsaw situation. Could you imagine him like dropped into a Jigsaw scenario?
Does he have STEM, or is he?
Let's give him STEM.
Okay.
Let's give him STEM.
I would say he's a pretty kind of analog, hands-on guy who fixes cars, so he might be, even without STEM, he might be pretty good in a Jigsaw trap. I think with STEM. I mean, STEM is even more ruthless than Jigsaw. So I think that STEM would find the path of least resistance and just turn off Gray's pain receptors and just like stick his arm into whatever stops the trap. Like, I think he would do really well.
This needs to happen.
Yeah,
James,
I know.
Someone called James Wan.
Crossover, yeah. Can we get some
done?
cinematic universe potential
Please, Jigsaw MCU. You know, I'm curious, who voices the voice in Gray's head? It's computer-esque, but who is it?
It's this actor named Simon Maiden. The film was shot in Australia, so he's an Australian guy. I found he's done a lot of voiceover work, and actually, when you hear him talking in the film, it was all done on the set live. Like, none of it was dubbed in later, because I wanted their rapport and their interactions to be very of the moment, off the cuff, the same way that two people talking to each other. So whenever you see, in the movie, when you see Logan, Simon is just off camera in another room, and they're just doing it. Logan had an earpiece in, and they could actually talk to each other. Yeah. That's why they could interrupt each other.
That's so cool. Now, we're obviously sitting here in D.C. You mentioned on the way in that in 2004, you and James were here for a little film called Saw, which basically changed horror for so many years. And now Blumhouse, I feel like, is kind of doing that similar thing again with that low-budget element of like horror movies with Get Out, and you know, it's amazing. So I'm wondering for you what that was like being in D.C. in 2004 for the first time, walking onto or seeing those steps, because you're a horror fan from Australia.
Well, I mean, you know, I've got my. If we can just, we can see it. That's a frame from The Exorcist.
Yeah.
It was amazing. I mean, they did say to us. I remember we didn't have long here, and they said, "We've got an hour. So do you want to go do something? Do you want to see the Lincoln statue?" And James and I were like, "Exorcist steps," in unison. And then we proceeded to take the same photo that everyone else takes on those steps, and it was awesome. I mean, you got to remember, when we did that movie, we were like 25 years old. We had no idea what we were doing, and the fact that we were somewhere talking to people about it just blew our minds. And like, it was totally new to us. Not that I'm not jaded in any way now, but back then it was just, we just couldn't believe that somebody cared, you know?
Yeah. And before we let you go, the last question I'm going to ask you, obviously you grew up in Australia, and there's so many great filmmakers and actors who come from Australia, clearly, and you know, there's countless of them. I'm curious, as you were growing up as a kid, what you kind of utilized in Upgrade that you kind of like took back from your childhood? Were there elements of like, I don't know it's kind of a retrospective question, but could you think back to maybe when you were a kid, or maybe like what this movie would mean to you if you saw it?
I think I would have loved this, especially as a teenager, because I remember I grew up in the video store era. You may not remember these.
Dude, Blockbuster was my jam, man.
Blockbuster? Okay.
So I bike to Blockbuster every day to rent Terminator 2 when I would come home. Come on.
So I was pre-Blockbuster to rent Terminator 1. I was like 10 years behind you.
Yeah.
And all the films from that era, The Terminator, RoboCop, The Thing, The Fly, all those movies, they meant, I love those movies back then, and they're kind of even more special now because they all use practical effects. It was before the advent of CGI.
Yeah.
And so I used those movies as inspiration for Upgrade because we didn't have a lot of money. We couldn't go bananas with the CGI. So I looked to those movies as a way to make a sci-fi film within a box, within a budget. And, I just think I would love a return to that kind of sci-fi,
Yeah.